Hi there. Just going to double check and make sure I'm live in all the places. Yep. I see myself. Okay. So welcome back to this training series called Prioritize Protein. So this training series was designed to support you to learn more about the health benefits of protein and how it can benefit not only your health, but your journey to release any extra body weight that you're carrying. And today, what we're going to be talking about is some of the things that people are afraid about when it comes to eating protein. So in the section, I guess, on top of the video, there's a link to the training series where I've already covered a whole bunch of different topics. And you can go to that link, put your name and email in, and then get access to all of the replays of the other topics. So up till this point, I've been talking about the health benefits of eating more protein or getting adequate protein in your diet. And today I'm going to be uncovering and deconstructing all of the things that right now, when you say, if you did a nice little Google search on protein, animal protein in particular, or meat, you would find a lot of scary things that would make you afraid to prioritize protein on your plate. So today I want to go through all of those different things that you might find on the internet and bring some perspective to these topics, because the truth is that there's a half truth or a part of the truth in pretty much every extreme perspective that is out there. What really happens is that people typically will take something that makes sense in isolation and then extrapolate that to everyone or every situation. And in that creates those polarities, right? So that's what we have right now. We have a world in which people either demonize animal protein or demonize plants, just in general, right? Like you can literally go and find a whole bunch of information about how all of the things that we normally think of as being healthy, like phytonutrients and things having antioxidant value in plants, as all being plant toxins, and that they're harming people, right? So, and then the other side, the veganism perspective of like health-wise, people are afraid of, if you eat animal protein, you're going to get cancer, kidney disease, you're going to become acidic, and your bones are going to break down, and your liver is going to be overwhelmed, right? Like this is literally the polarized perspectives about eating animal protein. So today what I want to do is give you the context for that, right? So that you can come up with your own logical decision about how much or how little animal protein you want to include in your diet based on facts as we know them at this point, instead of just fear, right? So, and the reason I say facts at this point is because the truth is that with scientific research, it's always based on things based on the knowledge that we currently have, right? So if knowledge, information, or anything changes that changes our perspective, then automatically it causes us to ask new questions, and then we get new science. So it's really, really important to do the research and understand, but at the end of the day, recognize that there's no way we can always know everything about anything in the universe, and also not nutrition. So I want to share that I am sharing with you the knowledge that I have to the best of my ability. And it's not just based on my opinion. I'll share with you what my bias is, but also that I've done quite a bit of research to pull together just for this particular live stream to give us the context of where these belief systems come from. So I'm not just coming to you with like, here's my opinions, right? And here's my bias. I actually operate in both perspectives. I was a former vegetarian for 13 years, and I did not eat even eggs during that time. So the only animal food that was included in my diet for 13 years was cheese. I didn't drink milk. So just, cheese and yogurt. And I don't really like the taste of meat. So to be honest with you, there's a really like strong part of me based on being an animal lover, and also that I don't really like the taste of meat, and I could absolutely live without that flavor in my diet and never have it again, and I wouldn't care. But I have experienced what it's like to live for 13 years without any animal protein that is like a meat-based protein, or eggs, which have different nutritional profiles as just dairy. And I had, after doing that for 13 years and having also 2 pregnancies, right? So when you're pregnant, you actually have to you need even more nutrition. So some of the things that you're nutritionally deficient in will show up while you're in pregnancy, or body system imbalances that you have will show up in pregnancy, because it's like weakening you nutritionally, because if you're just maintaining the same diet, but you're now sharing that nutrition with the baby, you're going to notice things more. So I talked more about that in the previous training. So if you want to hear those stories, then go to the link above the video and sign up, and you'll get instant access to those replays. So the truth is that honestly, I would love to be proven that I could eat a vegetarian or vegan diet and never have these health problems, and that would be the healthiest diet in the world for the planet, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I also covered that in the other trainings about this concept. It's another myth that we have, that if we just all go vegan, that's going to save the planet. That is not true. Again, if you look at things from a systems perspective and understand how things operate in the ecosystem, you'll find out that that's actually not the truth. So as much as I would love that to be the truth, being an animal lover and not liking the taste of meat, after living through that and having personal experience with it, and then doing more research, I've chosen to incorporate meat back into my diet, and I was able to restore balance to my body, and therefore release that weight and like stop the issues that were happening with my teeth as well. Was a big thing. That's one of the first signs that I experienced. And a lot of people they'll notice things in their teeth, their gums and things like that. It's a great place to be able to notice when you have nutritional deficiencies. So I have done that. I've even like come from that perspective. So I'm not here to, be like super negative about veganism. Like, I understand the context of it, where it's so beneficial as a nutritionist, is that it's so cleansing, right? So if you've been on a standard North American diet, you're feeling really heavy, eating plant foods will give you the cleansing that you need that will restore you back to balance. But if we want to maintain optimal health and we want to make decisions that are conscious, we have to keep the big picture in mind and go for balance. And again, that will be unique to each person depending on where they're at in their personal situation. So I'll give you besides my, bias towards like, I wish I was wrong about this. I wish that we didn't have to eat animal protein to achieve and maintain optimal health. But I have a belief system of naturally being more geared to things that are natural, right? Like, basically, this is one of the reasons why I considered initially to stop being a vegetarian and to incorporate animal foods back into my diet, was because it's not natural to live in the world as a vegan. There's no historical evidence of any vegan civilizations or tribes. And even the ones that would tend towards being vegetarian would even eat insects. So, and that's like just like one that we know of. So traditionally, our ancestors have included animal foods in their diet. Now, how much they included is different for different geographical regions, but I'm always going to be naturally geared towards something that I would look at like, okay, could this be replicated in nature, right? For me to go and buy some very highly processed vegan meat alternatives doesn't make any sense to me. That's not natural. We don't have a history of eating those foods with all the additives in them. And then it just kind of cuts out that whole idea of like being better for the planet with all of the additives that are in that food and all the transport. The vegetables aren't necessarily going to, just because we're not eating meat doesn't mean that how we're getting those vegetables isn't also killing animals in the process from the monocropping and not sustainable agriculture and etc. So basically, where was I going with that? Totally lost my train of thought on that. But anyways, I'm just trying to share with you like my bias. So my bias is like, that's not natural either. Okay. Transporting food all across the world. And, there's so much work to be done as far as like sustainability, and what's best for animals and what's natural and what is our human relationship with animals in nature. There's so many things to be considered. So anyways, I'm not going to go into all that because I have touched on that as I've gone through the series, which you can get access to with the link above. And inside the download page where I provided the replays for this series, I have provided a lot of links to follow up on information that I've touched on so that you can go deeper and find out where my references and research has come from. And the same with today. So everything that I'm going to be sharing with you today, I will put that on the download page so you can follow up on this research and the people that I've learned about these things from, so that you can understand the context of their research. Just need a little sip of this coffee. Okay. So I'm going to start with cancer. And the reason why is because I think this is the one that most people are, when it comes to health, the most concerned about eating animal protein. And the reason why is because basically there's a lot of research that goes out into the world that is, and studies that are interpreted by journalists and the media. And because of that, we get these really like intensive headlines. We don't the media doesn't understand how the math is done in scientific studies. And so things get extrapolated to be much more concerning than they are. And they may not even be at all relative to humans. And also, just actually, before I get into the cancer thing, I want to also say, like, everything that I'm talking about eating too much protein, right? Because everybody knows that there's a certain amount of protein that you do need for optimal health, right? So, this is something that I provided in the resources, but in general, it's like there's some different opinions out there, but the upper end of optimal amounts of protein for somebody who is trying to maintain optimal muscle mass would be 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. Okay. So that's like, you're kind of going for like, that would be optimal. And then it's like 1.4, 1.8 different experts will tell you per pound. If you are, just trying to like not go less than the recommended daily amount. So when I'm talking about too much protein, I'm talking about 3 grams or more per kilogram. Okay. And so even when we're just like talking about defining too much protein, these numbers are even still not proven to be not healthy. Okay. So, but I'm just saying like, let's just define something. And that amount is like mostly 3 times more almost than the average person would be consuming. So unless you are like somebody who is like actively pursuing unnatural amounts of protein in your diet for other purposes, most of the things that are out there about eating too much protein are automatically just not even relevant to you, right? Like if you are just like a normal person eating normal foods, then likely you're actually deficient in protein. That this even conversation of too much protein is not even relevant to you, other than me covering the subject of cancer because everybody's afraid because of the media that meat causes cancer. So the only way you can really know if you're eating enough protein, is to either take the symptomatology test that's at my website. It's basically just a series of questions that will basically, like, they're just like, you just check it off. Symptoms that of protein deficiency and see if you have them or not. That's one way. The other way is to go into an app like FitnessPal, plug in everything you eat for a week, and just see on a daily basis, are you getting enough of the recommended daily amount of protein, which is, like I said, at the low end. It's not necessarily to optimize for rebalancing your muscle and optimizing your bone, etc. So those are the two ways that you can find out for sure. And some of you will just kind of know, right? You'll just know, like, I typically eat just a lot of carbohydrates, right? Like that. It's funny because actually we think of the standard North American diet because it has meat in it as being like a meat-centric diet. But the truth is, it's actually still a plant-forward diet because actually it's a grain-forward diet, which is a plant. And a lot of people are just eating a ton of bread and a ton of potatoes and grains and things like that. So really starch-heavy diet. Okay, so let's get to the cancer topic, because this is the one that I think is the most applicable to the most people in terms of concern. So if you're talking to a protein scientist, somebody who works in that field, who's researching protein, the general consensus is that protein doesn't cause cancer. Okay, so where we get these studies that the media then extrapolates into this idea that eating meat causes cancer are from epidemiological studies. And so what those studies are basically questionnaires that are surveys that ask people what they eat. And there's different databases that have over time been collecting all this information about people and what they eat. Now, first of all, it's not very okay, first of all, that's just designed to see the bigger picture and to come up with some questions so that you can actually design a study that is relevant, right? Like, those studies are not created to create, to find actual causes. They're to see some possible correlations and then to create a study based on the questions that come out of that type of data and research. So the reason it's flawed is right away because, number one, how well could you really explain what you eat in a day on a survey, right? Like, most people don't know, their macros that they're eating in each meal. And then they don't know, like, from one day to the next, right? Like, it's just try to do it. Just think back to, unless you're somebody who's like super into already like counting your macros, you're not going to know that information. So when you go to fill out a food survey, it's not going to be very scientific. It's going to be like your feelings about what you eat, really, right? It's like your perspective, because a lot of people just, they believe they eat healthy or they believe they're eating enough of this or that, but they're really not, right? Like, it's just all of us, like, unless you're actually using some way to like get that data clearly, it's not going to be very great. So that data is, to start, not very great. Okay. And a lot of these so-called like science that goes into the media is based on this when it comes to nutrition. Okay. So basically it's really hard to do a double-blind placebo-controlled study, which is like the best kind of study that you could do on something that has multiple causes, right? So there's too many confounding variables, which means like things that could be also impacting what you're researching that you can't really you can't actually address and account for. So those things are like, for example, if you're doing a epidemiology study and you're looking at meat eaters, people who identify as eating a certain amount of meat per day or consistently, oftentimes those people are also eating the standard North American diet, of a lot of high starch foods, the potatoes, the canned peas and the canned corn. They're not really eating a lot of fresh food. They're probably eating fast food. And they also happen to eat meat. And then you have the other group of people who identify as being vegan or vegetarian, which automatically you're a more health conscious person for the most part. And I'm not saying every vegan or vegetarian is a more health conscious person, because some are not. They are literally junk food vegetarians and junk food vegans. And that's the worst diet you could possibly have. So automatically that skews the results you're going to get. So now suddenly you're saying that more people have cancer when they eat meat, but really they also don't really eat a lot of vegetables, and at least not fresh ones, right? So there's all these other factors of food. And then of course, there's no one thing that's ever going to cause one disease, right? Like it's always a bunch of whether we are susceptible to disease or not is based on so many different variables and different things that could be happening in our life, not just what we're physically putting into our mouth, but what we're, whether we're digesting our food or not. Are we actually getting that nutrition we eat? Are we super stressed? Are we exposed to other toxins in the environment, right? Like, so that if you're eating the standard North American diet, you're also consuming non-organic food, which is full of pesticides. You're probably eating processed food, which is full of additives. And suddenly this natural thing that humans have been eating for all of time, meat, is going to be the cause of cancer. It's just not logical. Okay, so just want to make sure I don't miss any important points here. I showed up to this training having done my research. So I'm probably going to be looking at my notes quite a bit to make sure I don't miss. Okay. Some other things. Okay. So we've discussed the food surveys, and that epidemiological studies are not designed to prove a hypothesis. They're only designed to come up with questions and ideas for things to study. And then there's too many confounding issues contributing to whether somebody would get a disease or not. Okay, so that's looking at those kinds of studies. But then we have things like rat studies, right? Now, one thing is if you're vegan, these should be studies that you would not support, because they're harming rats and killing them and hurting them and making their lives miserable to do these studies. So that's one reason why this rat studies totally suck. One more sip. Rats are the sweetest. They are actually like a very conscious animal, and they make great pets. So yeah, and that's one of the things we do in this society, right? Is we like make some animals more important than others. And one of when we monocrop vegetables for all this vegetarian vegan food, we are killing small rodents and ruining habitats for other animals. So there's so many things to consider when it comes to making choices about our food. Okay, so here's what they do in the rat studies. They will take the rats and feed them. It's called ad libitum, and that means that they're being fed continuously. The reason why they're doing this is because they want to give them as much of the thing that they're trying to prove is going to cause the health problem in the shortest period of time, so that the animal doesn't cost too much money to keep around and feed, right? And so these are like rats living in conditions that are not healthy, that they're not a natural rat environment, okay? And they are being fed continuously without stopping. And it's not even what they're supposed to be eating. And then we're going to say that we did all these really negative things to the rats and they got more cancer, that it was because of meat, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense on that level. It also doesn't make any sense to extrapolate it to humans because number one, we're not rats. Number two, we don't eat continuously. Like I am not walking around with an IV pumping food into my body at all times, right? Or nutrients. So the things that will stimulate that are associated with cancer are certain like growth factors. Okay, so one is very similar to insulin, and another is called mTOR. Okay, so these are our growth factors. Now, in a human, we wouldn't be stimulating these 24/7, these growth factors, right? We would be eating at mealtime, and we'd have lots of time in between that to not be stimulating that. But in these rat studies, they're constantly stimulating these growth factors and then saying that the food is causing the cancer, but actually when you're constantly eating, you're constantly stimulating growth factors. And mTOR and IGF is like, it's an insulin-like chemical. It actually has, these things have positive things that they do in the body as well. Okay, so it's not like they're just stimulating something that was never there and that's now creating cancer. Okay, it's just you create imbalance in the body, you create imbalance in the system, and then you create imbalance, which is health being out of balance, which is disease. Well, we call it disease, right? So can't really prove anything when you have something that comes from a rat study. And understanding how those are done can give you a lot of perspective and context to not take it that seriously. Also, there's studies done. Here's one here. I'm just going to give a quick little, like what the quote was from it. Is this is the one that I think is most being used for to promote eating a vegan diet and not eating a lot of protein. So the study said that low protein intake is associated with major reduction in cancer and overall mortality in people 65 and younger, but not the older population. Okay. So this was done in a lab. It was like molecular data or mechanistic data that is technically true. What they did something in a lab regarding molecules that are involved in cancer, IGF-1, this insulin growth factor. They did it in like a test kind of tube, and they did not it wasn't even on an animal. Okay, they just were able to create this scenario in which they could say that along with this like molecular science, and then like use some epidemiological data, and then together they put those into the conclusion that if a person were to eat a lower protein diet, they would have less cancer. Okay, so they've taken something that is not even in an animal, it's done in isolation, and then connected it to epidemiological research, and then they actually published it in a cellular magazine or journal, like not a nutrition journal. Okay, so the people reviewing this who are working with cells but not nutrition are going to accept the data because it's in that genre of looking at things in isolation, right? But we don't look at things in isolation with humans. What necessarily happens, we make something up in a lab, is not going to necessarily happen in real life with humans, right? Like it's just so far removed from reality that it just can't be, extrapolated into humans. Okay, so technically, this research is true. It's technically true, but it's not relative to real life, right? Real human scenarios. So just take it all with a grain of salt, is what I'm saying. Okay, So, and then there's this other little thing that goes along with it, with these numbers. Okay. So they extrapolate it to much bigger numbers than the risks actually are through the media because of how math is done in these studies. So basically, there's something called relative risk and something called absolute risk. Okay, so absolute risk is just in like a large amount of people, preferably a large amount of people, because this is another thing. If the study is not designed on a large group, then it doesn't have as much value, right? Because you just don't know what the factors could be. Like if you only have 4 people in a study, that is not going to be as relevant to, you know, a study with 100,000 people. Because there could just be like some certain things that are similar about that group that would not be similar about the population at large. So the size of the study makes a big difference. But basically, absolute risk means if this, you know, didn't happen anywhere, or if this, like, so if we just randomly, let's take cancer, for example. So I wrote out some numbers here. So what page is that on? Where did I put it? It's like, how many pages do I have on that? You know, really, there's could be a whole training in itself, right? This one topic. Oh, here it is, right at the top. Okay. So let's look at something like, let's say that we have, because I think if you just use 100, like, because we have 100%, it's just easier for the brain to follow along. And that's one of the reasons why this is so challenging, is because it's so, it's not the natural way that we think. So when we hear something, oh, you get like a 50% increase in cancer if you eat bacon, then we just assume, well, that meant that, like, we really, if we eat bacon, our chances of getting cancer are 50% more, right? Like, this is actually what went out in the media. But actually, we have to look at what doubled. Like, what was the starting amount of cancer that people just have in general that either eat bacon or don't eat bacon, right? Like, there's just like so many things to consider in a study. So, so we're going to look at a group of people in general, how, like, just a random group of people of 100. And let's say one person in that 100 gets cancer. And then we have another group, and we have those people eat an extra bacon sandwich, okay, every single day. And in those groups, in that group of people, they got, you get two cases of cancer. Okay, so now the media would make that a 50% increase in cancer. Because you have one group of people, they didn't eat bacon. They have only one cancer in that group of 100. This other group of people, they all eat bacon. It's 100 of people, and they get two cases of cancer. And then the media says, because one group went from 1 to the other to 2, that's a relative risk. Now we have this idea that you actually have a 50% increase. But actually, the percentage just went up by 1% if you ate bacon. And that could have actually been anything that could have caused that, right? So this is the kind of stuff that's going out in the media. And that's why you have to be really careful to just either learn how to read a study, which I know is like super boring, and it's actually created in a very confusing way. It's not an intuitive way of thinking when the results are written up. So it's easy to misunderstand. So that's why at the end of the day, how I look at it is, yes, I'm willing to do this research because I'm passionate about nutrition, right? And I'm passionate about sharing nutrition. But if I wasn't, at the end of the day, I would go back to my bias, which is, if it's not natural, it's probably not good for you. So therefore, I would always assume that it's natural to eat meat for humans. It's part of our natural diet. So it's probably healthy. But then you go into how much is natural, right? And then that's where we get the differences to figure out, how much is natural for each person or, for our species, right? Like, so probably not natural to just eat muscle meat 3 times a day, right? There's a lot of cultures who would only eat meat once or twice a week. And the way that actually all of us, if we're not eating organ meats, are eating animal foods is actually unnatural, because we would not just be eating the muscle meat, we would actually also be eating the organs, which are higher in, your fat soluble vitamins that are also really important for health. So that to me would be the natural way of eating, is to eat the whole animal, and eat an animal that has been either from the wild, or if it's being raised by humans, that they're being raised in their most natural environment possible, eating their natural diet. That would be the most logical, healthy way of eating animal foods, from my perspective. So then at the end of the day, then, don't get caught up in what all these, this science that comes out in the media, because it's all been misconstrued and the math doesn't add up to real life. So I'm going to be putting links to a bunch of different things that you can follow up to understand more about absolute risk versus relative risk, and a couple of videos from some scientists who work in the field of protein, who are not, they're the people that are doing this behind the scenes research that are not influencers. They are not like out there to like promote something. It's just what they do, right? They just do this research. And those are the people that you want to listen to as much as possible. So I've provided that for you. So hopefully now you get that there's the difference between like the absolute truth versus things that are technically true in isolation, but don't necessarily apply to real life and real people. Okay, so there we go. We got that one covered. So another one that people are often concerned about is that it's really hard on the kidneys to eat too much protein. So, instinctively, intuitively, I would be like, well, yeah, if you're eating too much of something, even if it's healthy for you, you're going to put stress on your body. So I'm willing to consider that. But interestingly, there has been research that's done where they showed people who ate that 3 grams of protein per kilogram of their body weight, and they were athletes. Okay, so they were working out and stuff, and they did follow-up research on them and found them to be really healthy. Their kidneys were healthy. Now, that's not to say that you could apply that to a sedentary person. Okay, so you have to, look at all the context, but it's only those athletes that are going to be eating those, and bodybuilders who are going to be eating those extra amounts of nutrition that are different than, your average person. So again, context, right? I also did some research to see, I was like, well, if this is like a real concern, and then I should be able to do a quick Google search and find out that like there's a whole bunch of bodybuilders online who are have stories about how they ended up with kidney disease because they ate too much protein. And I couldn't find it. All I could find was this one thing where they were following these 10 bodybuilders. And they actually had kidney disease, but they also were on steroids, right? So that has negative effects on the kidneys. So that's not the same as average people. Average people don't take steroids. Also, they would have been on other supplements, because they typically, when people are into, bodybuilding, they take supplements other than what the regular population would take. So that could be also a confounding factor. And then dehydration is part of what they do to get cut for their shows, right? So dehydration in the kidneys is not so great, okay? So there's, it's not the protein in isolation that is causing kidney disease. Now, basically the research is, I found different things about kidneys and excess protein right now, the current research. And what it looks like is, for sure, it's not the cause of kidney disease, but it could, if you already had kidney stress and kidney problems, it could make it worse. So, that's something to concern yourself with only if you eat unnaturally large amounts of protein. And again, if you're not a bodybuilder, you probably not, it doesn't concern you. So do not worry about your kidneys. Here's another one. Meat causes bone breakdown. So bone breakdown is supposed to be due to this mineral called phosphorus, which makes actually no sense because phosphorus is a building block of your bones and teeth. So the reason why they're saying that it causes, that can cause bone and teeth breakdown is because it's, as a molecule, phosphorus is acid. Okay. So now we're looking at what we're doing is applying something unnatural to natural. So we're saying if a person has too much phosphorus in their bloodstream, that it's because of eating meat in a natural or in a natural way, right? Like we're saying that they're eating it's all so like when you look at things in context, it's not black and white, right? So so it's hard for the brain to hold on to all this stuff at the same time. But if you are if you are somebody who is healthy, your kidneys, if you're eating a natural whole foods like diet in a natural way that's not excessive in meat, and you have healthy kidneys, they're going to automatically keep your phosphorus and calcium levels in balance. So what the concern is that if you get too much phosphorus in your blood, then that's going to deplete calcium from your bones and teeth to keep your blood alkaline. That's what the thought is. Okay. But again, who is getting exposed to high excessive amounts of phosphorus? It's not people eating meat in moderation. It's actually a synthetic phosphorus that's coming from a whole bunch of things that are in the standard North American diet that have nothing to do with meat. Okay, so I'm going to read them for you. Well, one of them does have to do with meat. There is some processed meat that has phosphorus that's added to it as a marinade, or it's injected. Like these are phosphate additives that are injected into the meat to keep it tender and juicy. Okay, so never have I ever in this entire series promoted processed meat. Okay? I'm always promoting that you eat things the way nature provided them, and this is not the way nature provides it. But to be honest with you, the ratio of meat to other things in the diet, the standard North American diet, is so small, right? Like the amount of pop and starchy carbs in the form of white bread, treats, etc., that people eat, meat is such a small, even if you were eating these processed meats, you would be eating a lot less of them compared to the other things that actually also have phosphorus in them that are vegetarian. Okay. So cola. So all of your carbonated beverages, okay, are all full of phosphorus. So that is something that people tend to, first of all, that's not found in nature, right? Carbonated beverages are not found in nature. Fermented beverages that are through lactofermentation are actually something that we traditionally ate. And I think that a lot of people are addicted to carbohydrate or to drinks like pop is because on some level their body's telling them to eat like fermented beverages because they really do help with adding beneficial bacteria to your gut and to help with to digest actually protein better. But eating Coke or Sprite or whatever, all these different brand names, I don't even know. It's been so long since I've eaten them. I know there's a lot more. Those things are actually full of these too much phosphorus, and they're not providing any nutrition value. They're also providing so much sugar. There's no way that they can be healthy for you. And people are eating a lot more of that in their diet in relation to processed meats. because usually that's, there's only so much protein that your body will accept before you feel full. Whereas the carbohydrate things, the more sugar you eat, the more you want, because you never get satisfied, and your body is actually telling you to keep eating more, because it's like hoping that if you just eat enough, it'll eventually get enough protein. So all these baked goods, so biscuits, pancakes, toaster pastries, any other baked goods that are made in a store, that are going to sit on the shelf, have leavening agents and phosphate additives that are another source of phosphates. Okay. And same thing with fast food. Over 80% of menu items had added phosphorus. And all of our convenience foods, right, also will have these additives. Like the phosphate additives are for helping the convenience food to cook faster so you can produce more and improve shelf life. Okay, so yeah, synthetic phosphorus is added to your diet. And now if somebody's eating the standard North American diet, they're going to be having all of those things as the synthetic phosphorus added to their diet. They're going to have processed meats, they're going to have pop, they're going to have baked goods, fast food, and convenience foods. And there we are blaming it on animal meat that's eaten in moderation. I don't think so. Okay, so there's the too much meat causes bone breakdown. This is theoretical and not proven, and it's just not where you need to be worried. You should be concerned about eliminating those other things from your diet, not natural quality meat. Okay, so the next one is acidity. So basically, there's this like push right now to eat alkaline, right? To drink alkaline water, all these different things. And then we've demonized acidic and made alkaline angelic, right? So this is totally not, again, it's polarizing things. You're not supposed to be acid or alkaline. You're supposed to have pH balance, which means that you're going to have the pH in the right spot in the middle, where you're not too acid and you're not too alkaline. But it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. You're looking for balance. Okay, so meat is on the acidic side. Okay, so something like your greens, your non-starchy vegetables will be on the alkaline side. Okay, so what you're supposed to do when you're eating animal foods is to balance it with your plant foods. Okay, so, but what most people are doing that are on the standard North American diet is their entire plate is acid. Okay, they've got their canned vegetables, they've got their potatoes, and they've got their grains, their bread, and their meat. And their whole plate is acid, not because they are eating meat, but it's because they're not balancing their diet properly, right? So ideally, you would have something more like, a piece of meat on your plate and some non-starchy vegetables, maybe a little bit of salad on the side, and a little bit of your starchy grains and carbs and things like that. And actually in this series, I did explain more of how to balance protein on your plate. And that's in the replays that you can get in the link above the video. Okay, so we're not trying to demonize acidity. You don't want to be too acidic, but you also don't want to be too alkaline, because they both result in health challenges and imbalances. Okay, so here's some other, I'm going to read you some things that are also on the acid side of pH balance. Okay, and these are things that are not, most of them are not demonized, and many of them are considered health foods. Okay, so we've got oats, plums, lima beans, bread, grains, brown rice, black tea, soy milk, cocoa, nuts, coffee, distilled water, purified water. Those are actually all more acidic. Okay, and equally acidic to meat. They're not quite as acidic as meat, but equally acidic to meat is popcorn, pasta, pastries, and pickles. Okay, and we have not demonized any of those things. But what is more acidic than meat is canned fruits and vegetables, processed refined foods in general, and energy drinks, and of course your carbonated beverages. It's so frustrating. So many things are just like taken completely out of context and made so black and white, and that's so unfortunate. Okay, so basically, if you look at like a meal as an example, a fast food meal, right? It's like we typically think of it as like that's unhealthy, and it actually is very acidic, right? Because of the foods that it contains. But technically, what's bad about a fast food meal is not the burger patty, other than the fact that if it comes from like a conventional, like, huge factory farm, it's the bun that's made of white flour, right? And has all these like additives in it so that it doesn't go bad. And the French fries that are made in vegetable oils that it's been cooked over and over in, like sometimes a couple weeks. You're getting the most rancid possible oils in your body by eating French fries. And then the soft drink. Okay, so there's like, that is the problem with fast food. People think it's the meat, that it's the burger. The burger is not the problem. It's the other stuff that's the problem. When you really look at what those things are and how they're made and what the ingredients are, it's so easy to see that that's what is making people that say, if you see people often on these like, shows that show people who eat like extreme things, or like these like shows where they go into a person's kitchen and like, change them from their standard North American diet to natural whole foods, or like shows where they show these like really obese people and they show what they eat. That's what these foods are. Unfortunately, the plates are made of. They're made of all foods that are like grains and starchy vegetables like a potato, and canned vegetables, and maybe a little meat on the plate. But the problem is all those other things. And of course, that entire fast food meal, if you just took the meat bun or the meat out of the bun and you just ate the rest of the meal, it's like just starch and sugar. That's all you've eaten, starch and sugar. And we've been pointing the finger at the burger patty. It just makes absolutely no sense. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. Did I get them all? I believe I did. Yes. Let me just check the link on Facebook to make sure I covered everything. Oh, liver. Forgot liver. Okay. So this one won't take too long. So there's actually some specific research on exactly how much the liver can tolerate. Because the liver is like a regulator, right? So like it has a lot of different jobs to do. And so when you eat protein, it breaks down or reassembles the amino acids into different proteins. And, like anything, there's a limit to how much can be done in a certain amount of time and with a certain amount of nutritional resources, etc. Okay, so first of all, just to also remind you that I'm not advocating for excessive amounts of protein. I'm advocating for a balanced diet. But even given that, and remember, we talked about how what was considered high protein, like excessive protein, potentially excessive, would be 3 grams per kilogram of your weight. So in some of this, like more isolated research, again, the context is everything. So this is not to say that just because this study says this, that it means that you should eat more or less protein based on that, okay? Because if your liver is sluggish because you're toxic and you're undernourished and you're not providing your liver with enough nutrients and it can't do anything optimally, then this is going to be too much protein for you as an individual. But we're just going to look at like some healthy people who are eating what is considered too much protein. And what they found is that the liver can basically take these amino acids apart and put them back together into different protein, like proteins, at an amount of 3.5 to 4.5 grams of protein per kilogram per day of a person's body weight. Okay, so at the end of the day, it's not showing that too much protein stresses the liver, but like I said, again, you have to look at your own symptoms and your own digestive capacity. Like if you're not digesting, if you eat protein and you get a stomach ache, that's a sign that you're eating too much protein for how much digestive fire or digestive capacity that you have currently. Now, that doesn't mean that protein is bad. It means that, and so most people will leave it at, oh, I guess I shouldn't be eating protein because I'm getting a stomach ache when I eat it. No, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. What you're supposed to be doing is getting healthy. And you need to restore your body's ability to digest protein, not avoid it, right? Because you can't just avoid like foods forever and expect to be, or specific nutrients forever and expect to be healthy, right? You actually want to get to the place where your body is in such a state of balance that you can pretty much digest anything, anything that's found in nature, without having any kind of negative consequences from doing that. That is what health would look like. But today, what we have is a lot of people with different health issues that cause them to have a lot of digestive disturbances in relation to actually healthy foods. And then they have to swear off those foods forever. But the underlying imbalance is causing you not to be able to digest that food is still there, and it's getting worse, right? And then what happens is there's less foods you can eat, right? It's like the food sensitivity sequela is less and less food becomes digestible. And the problem is not with the food. The problem is with the imbalance in the digestive system that is weakened. That's not allowing you to digest food properly. And then that leads to low enzymes because you're not getting enough nutrition, and then leads to leaky gut, and then leads to autoimmunity and excessive inflammation, etc. So you always want to not settle for that belief that because you can't digest something that is, natural, that it's bad for you. And that would be the same like for all the different special diets that are out there. You go on them and you use them to bring balance back to your body because it's gone in some sort of extreme state of imbalance. You have to do something more extreme to bring it back to the middle, but you're not going to do that forever. That doesn't mean that because it brought you back to balance, that it's going to keep you in balance, right? Like literally people just tend to swing from one pendulum to the next of this extreme to that extreme. And I really truly believe that if you are healthy, then you should eat like a healthy person, which is to eat everything in moderation. And in my context and my value system, that would be natural whole foods. Yeah, of course you can get away with it when you're healthy eating, junk food, but that becomes an extreme, right? And sometimes even moderation, we have to do in moderation. Some people can be really extreme about moderation and not be willing to do some of the things that they may need to do that's more to one extreme to bring their body back into balance. And that's why oftentimes when people do become vegan or vegetarian, and it comes along with a health consciousness, they eat whole foods and then they start to feel better. And they are eating more vegetables, obviously, than they were before because now their diet is completely plant-based. So they make the mistake of thinking that the health benefits they got were from eliminating meat. But the health benefits they got were from eating more vegetables, and restoring balance in their body. And they, if they stick to that to an extreme, then now what was used to bring balance back is now going to go to the opposite extreme. And then we have other health problems. And, obviously I don't need to go into this on here, but I mean, you just do a quick YouTube search of people who will tell you why they regretted staying on vegetarian or vegan diets for too long and what happened and why they've gone back to eating a balanced diet that includes animal products. And the same thing we've got the carnivore diet now at the opposite extreme. That's the pendulum is only vegetables or only meat. And that diet has healed a lot of people of their autoimmune diseases. And but the question is why can the person not eat vegetables ever again without suffering for it? There's still a state of imbalance there if you can't. So just heal your gut, right? Just get to the root of the problem and restore your ability to eat everything in moderation. To me, that makes the most sense, not just for like, at the health level, but just for like, enjoying life and living, because food is not just about, how it affects the body, like nutritionally, but there's so much to be gained through connection with one another and community over, a delicious meal and good conversation. So food is more than just nutrition. It is nourishment on all the levels. And with that, I will end this training. And I'm going to be back next week with a training on some of my favorite ways to get optimal protein in my diet that includes both animal and vegetarian sources of protein. All right, we'll see you then. Bye for now.